If Islander fans wanted a new direction, they got it today. Matthew Schaefer, first overall pick. Then trading Noah Dobson for 2 more first-round picks. We'll break down the picks, the players, the prospects, and the impact it'll have on the Islanders next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to this special bonus episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us to talk a little Islanders hockey today. A historic day for the New York Islanders. They take Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman, with the first overall pick. But earlier in the day, they move on from Noah Dobson, add 2 more picks in the first round and a player. And we're going to break down the impact of all of these moves on the New York Islanders on today's show. We got to start with Matthew Schaefer. And look, no surprise that Schaefer ends up being the first pick overall in this draft. He was, according to almost every scout, the best player available. Still only 17 years old, won't turn 18 until early September. And yet, when you watched this kid on the stage, the way he handled himself, the emotions, everything he's been through, you couldn't help but come across impressed by the maturity and just the way Matthew Schaefer handled himself. 6'2", 183 pounds, scored 7 goals and 22 points in 17 games for the Erie Otters. Also played very well at World Juniors, which was, again, very helpful to him as a prospect because scouts took a look at that, saw how he played against elite players in his age group, and came away impressed by that. And look, for Matthew Schaefer, this is the beginning of a new era. And look, the Islanders, you don't get a lot of first overall picks. In the history of the Islanders, you go with Billy Harris, the very first year that the Islanders existed. You go Dennis Potvin the following season. You go Rick DiPietro in 2000, and then you go John Tavares in 2009. Now you add Matthew Schaefer to the list. And what you should be getting in Matthew Schaefer is a top pair defenseman who can play the power play, who can kill penalties, who can give you 25 to 27 minutes a game on ice, and has really good vision, who can take over the course of a game. And that is something you really want to see in a first overall pick. You want a difference maker. And look, here's a kid who, at the age of 17, has already lost his mother due to cancer. And yet, you know, he showed a lot of emotion when he was picking, said all the right things. And you know, if you looked inside the jacket he was wearing, he had photos of his mom and of people who have helped him get to this point. Just absolutely a beautiful moment. And I just love the way this kid handles himself. And you can see he wants to dedicate his success in the NHL to his mother and her legacy and everything that, she meant to him. And it's just a beautiful thing to see. The way it all kind of played out. So we are very pleased with this pick. And hopefully, whether he starts this season in the NHL, spends another year in juniors, which I don't think necessarily makes a lot of sense, or goes the college route. Here is a kid who can and should be a fixture on the Islanders' blue line for, a decade or more if everything goes well. And yeah, I know a lot of people wanted Michael Misa. Granted, it wasn't as high a percentage as we expected. The final results on our poll here on YouTube, surprising in that 78% of almost 500 votes said take Matthew Schaefer, 13% Michael Misa, 8% James Hagens. And the Islanders did try to get James Hagens, and it just wasn't going to work out, unfortunately. It doesn't always work out. You want to make the trade, you want to make the move, but you need to be able to work out a deal that both teams are willing to accept. Hagens ends up going 7th overall to the Boston Bruins, and certainly we wish him luck there. But as of right now, the Islanders, for only the second time in their history, have chosen a defenseman with the number 1 overall pick and are looking forward to Schaefer. And look, let's temper expectations. Everydayers, we've talked about that most NHL players who are drafted don't even play in the NHL in their first year. And Schaefer has a chance to do that. We'll see him at prospects camp, later this coming week. So at least that is a plus. And what we want to see more, I think, than anything is don't rush him. If he needs another year, whether it's in juniors or in college, give it to him. But I think there's a good chance he'll contribute this year, but don't expect him or really too many other players in this draft where there was no generational talent to step in and be an all-star. Okay? He probably starts, if he does make the big club this year, if he makes the Islanders, probably starts on the third pair, or maybe doesn't even play every game at this point at his age. He'll barely be 18 when the season starts. But, you bring him along, you teach him, you develop him, and let's hope sincerely that one of the things Matthew Darche will do is fix the development aspect of this organization. We know we've got a new coach in Bridgeport. We've got a new way of looking at things and of doing business under Matthew Darche. And I think we saw a lot of that in this draft and on this day where, too often in the past under Lou Lamoriello, we would see the Islanders overpay players that Lou would admit too many years, too much money, too much term. Darche did not do that. And to stock up on these young players in this draft, everydayers, you'll remember we talked about Matthew Darche needing to start putting his stamp on this organization to get this team out of the muddy middle. And I think today day one of this draft, where the Islanders ended up making 3 selections, was a big first step in that direction. And you look at the prospect pool. A year ago, the Islanders were dead last in the league. They ended up drafting Cole Yzerman last year. They moved up to, 25th or 26th, something in that range, according to The Athletic. After making 3 first-round picks this year, they're going to move up a lot, especially with Schaefer added to the mix. So it is going to be a big step forward for this team. We talked about hope, and I think with the addition of Schaefer and the addition of 3 first-round picks, plus Cole Yzerman, plus 2 first-round picks coming up in a year, which Darche did not trade away. Hey, I think we are going and taking some big steps toward replenishing the prospect pool. And if enough of these guys pan out, replenishing the big club down the road. We have got a lot more to discuss on today's show. We'll break down the other 2 picks in this first round. One of them has NHL bloodline, so we'll talk about that. A brother who's also in the league. We'll discuss what these guys do well, what they need to work on. We'll talk about the Noah Dobson trade. All that still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you could splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee, so that takes the worry out of buying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So we mentioned earlier in the show that the Islanders traded Noah Dobson, and as part of the deal with Montreal, they end up with the 16th and 17th pick in this year's draft. And yeah, they tried to trade up to get James Hagens. It did not work out. And so they end up using both of these picks. And I think the beautiful thing about it is they got value for both of these picks. And that is the biggest thing. Victor Eklund taken with the 16th overall pick by the Islanders. And, first of all, he was ranked lower than that by most experts. You look at where the Athletic had him, they actually had him as the 8th overall rated prospect. He's only 5'11", listed at 161 pounds. He is the younger brother of William Eklund of the Sharks. And the thing that makes him so good is his compete level and his skating ability. He's got good speed, but kind of like Matthew Barzal, he's got great edge work and can be creative with the puck. Yes, he's undersized, but his compete level, according to scouts, is NHL high end. He goes after the puck, creates chances around the net, and according to many scouts, projects as a top line winger in the NHL once he gets a little bit more mature and starts to develop. And if you think about it, here is a kid who, if both he and Schaefer live up to expectations, you've got a top pair defenseman and a first line winger on day one of this draft. Played in Sweden last year and moved up to the second level, not juniors, played against adults last year, played in 42 games, scored 19 goals, 31 points, was a plus 16. And then his team ended up winning the title in his league, 2 goals, 7 points in 16 playoff games. Again, obviously, you're not going to play in the NHL at 161 pounds. He's got to add some bulk, but that's true of most draft picks in this league. And I really like what this kid brings to the table. And I love the value of getting a top 10 pick and a potential first line winger with the 16th pick. And then with the 17th pick, the Islanders go back to the blue line and add Kashawn Aitcheson, a Toronto native, 6'2", 196 pounds, played with the Barrie Colts last year, 26 goals and 59 points in 64 games, add 6 goals, 12 points in 16 playoff games. And, you know, you look at those numbers, and again, you always take numbers from players in juniors with a grain of salt. You have to, because, again, you're playing against a lower level of competition. But the thing I love here, the shot is above average according to most scouts, but the compete level is high end, and this kid is going to impress. The NHL comparison that I saw from some scouts was Jacob Trouba, and he is hyper competitive, who loves physical play. Everydayers, we've talked a lot this offseason about the need for this team to get more physical. And no, Kashawn Aitcheson is not going to play for the Islanders this year. He'll probably take 2 or 3 years, but he really is athletic and difficult to play against. And that is something this Islanders team has lacked in the last 2 or 3 years. So he's probably going to develop into a second pair defenseman, according to scouts. You start lining up, you know, Schaefer and Aitcheson, and you're adding pieces. You are making this organization better. And again, it's all about time. And I am fine with this organization taking one step back with the big club to take 2 or 3 steps forward. And I think Matthew Darche, look, he could have made a lot of people happy if he would have pulled the trigger on Hagens. He would have made some people happy if he would have overpaid Noah Dobson. But the fact that he didn't do either one of those things, that he said, okay, this is what I value this player at. I'm not going to overpay. I'm willing to make a deal. I'm going to try to make a deal. But if I can't, so be it. And I'll take the best player available with the pick I have. And what are we seeing? Both of the second and third picks in this draft in the first round, the compete level was one of their best attributes. And what is compete level? It's desire, it's heart, it's a hunger to win and to outplay the guy in the opposite colored jersey on the other side of the ice. So I like the overall direction that these picks represent. You took the best player on the board, according to most scouts. You took two players who are competitors, who are hungry, who one of them is very physical. The other one is dogged and determined with the forecheck. This checks a lot of boxes that the Islanders needed to check in the organization. It's not going to show up. Look, it's not necessarily going to make a big impact come October 7th when the season opens up. It will take time for these kids to make a huge impact in the NHL. But boy, I feel better about where this organization is and where it's heading than I did yesterday. And that is a step in the right direction. All right, we've got more to get to on today's show. Noah Dobson, no longer a New York Islander. We'll talk about what happened and how it impacts the team and the player that they got back in addition to the 2 draft picks and how he'll fit into the Islanders. We'll have our Islanders birthday of the day as well. So make sure you join us for that. It's a center who played on a lot of NHL teams and finished his career with the Islanders. And his son now plays in the NHL. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And I love having everything in one app. It just makes it so much easier to manage my money on a day-to-day basis. And if you share finances with your significant other, Monarch really has helped me stay on the same page. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. You can use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. So Friday afternoon, the Islanders move Noah Dobson, send him to the Montreal Canadiens. They end up with both of those picks that ended up turning into Victor Eklund and Kashawn Aitcheson. And they also acquired Emil Heinman from the Canadiens. He is 23 years old. He'll turn 24 in November. A native of Sweden, 6'2", 198 pounds, originally drafted by the Panthers in the second round in 2020. And before we break down his game a little bit, let's talk about why the Islanders decided to move on from Noah Dobson. And again, Matthew Darche filling us in, and that's refreshing as well. The cones of silence from Lou Lamoriello, I get it to a point, but I'm happier with a little more insight that we're getting from Matthew Darche right now. And what Darche said was that the negotiations with Noah Dobson were cordial, but they couldn't agree on a number. And there's been a lot of speculation out there that Dobson asked for the alleged $11 million, but whatever the number was, it was a high number because he wanted off the Islanders. Whether or not that's true, we don't know for certain, but certainly that ask, given the Islanders' cap crunch, made it difficult to keep him. And again, I applaud Matthew Darche for saying, I'm not giving in. This is what I value this player at, and I'm not going to overpay beyond that. And he ended up getting $9.5 million AAV for 8 years. And if Noah Dobson consistently becomes a 60-point, 55, 60-point guy and he cleans up his defense enough, by year 3 or 4, that could be a really good value for the Canadiens. The question is, will he? And yeah, trading Noah Dobson does not make the Islanders better right now. No question that trading your most mobile defenseman, the most productive offensive defenseman you have, is not going to improve this team in the short run. But you know what? I don't know if Dobson will ever realize his full potential. Whether that 70-point season he had 2 years ago was just a really good season that he'll never be able to duplicate, or whether he will eventually reach or even exceed that level on a consistent basis. I do know he struggled with consistency offensively, and his defense was a problem, a big problem for the Islanders. And I could say this, if he didn't really want to be here anymore, it makes even more sense to move on from him. And keep this in mind. You free up cap space, and that's an asset. You're adding Matthew Schaefer, who, while he may not be your number one defenseman right away, he can certainly fill that role in a couple of years. You end up adding 2 more first-round picks, which gave you the chance to try to acquire Hagens or some other player, but you end up using those picks when that doesn't work out. And I just think this was the right move by the New York Islanders under the circumstances. You're in a cap crunch. You're with a team that probably, again, before you make the deal, before the draft, the ceiling for this Islanders group is barely making the playoffs and most likely a first-round exit. You move on from Noah Dobson, you replenish the prospect pool, and now you free up, $8.5 million in cap space, because you still obviously have to pay Heinman, but you're freeing up cap space that you can use in a trade or in an actual, move. Now, Heinman is an RFA, but he doesn't have arbitration rights. So, you're probably going to pay him $1.5 million, maybe $2 million, but that's a far cry from $9.5 million. And the thing you're going to like about Emil Heinman, yeah, you look at the stats, 62 games, 10 goals, 18 points, 20 penalty minutes. But this kid likes to hit. He is physical. We've all said, everydayers know, we've talked about the Islanders' need to get grittier. Heinman is going to add that. And whether he plays on the 3rd line or the 4th line, he'll add some physicality to the bottom 6. And keep in mind, Canadiens fans, and I've heard from some of them on YouTube in their comments, they love this kid. He was a fan favorite for his style, got into a car accident in the middle of the season and really wasn't playing the same after it. So let's see whether or not that helps, once he's fully healed from that accident, that he goes back to how he was playing before the accident and takes his game to a higher level. But for what it's worth, many of my colleagues in the Locked On NHL network, 3 or 4 of them, when we were recording, clips for Locked On NHL, talked about how happy I must be that the Islanders had such a good draft. And it was so good to hear that, as opposed to, oh, Gil, you had nothing to do during this draft or during the first round. So lots of reasons for optimism. This was a day that changed the trajectory of the franchise, hopefully for the better. We probably won't know for 3, 4, 5 years, but I love the potential, and I like the way Darche handled this day and was willing to move on to plan B when plan A didn't work out. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. We are a day early here, but Sunday will be the 54th birthday of former Islanders center Mike Sillinger, the Regina, Saskatchewan native, 5'10", 200 pounds, a first-round pick of the Red Wings back in 1989. This guy played for half the teams in the league. He played for Detroit, Anaheim, Vancouver, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, Florida, Ottawa, Columbus, Phoenix, St. Louis, Nashville, and then finished his NHL career with the Islanders. His first year on the island, 06-07, by far his best, 26 goals, 59 points. And he added some veteran leadership and, kind of a good guy in the faceoff circle, can give you some offense, solid defensively. Always liked Mike Sillinger, and of course his son also playing now in the NHL. One of his better games is an Islander, December 6, 2006. Islanders in Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. Rick DiPietro, the Islanders goalie. Marc-Andre Fleury, the goalie for Pittsburgh. And in this game, the Islanders even at 2-2 late in the second period when Mike Sillinger scores on the power play. Tom Poti and Victor Kozlov the assist. That gives the Islanders a 3-2 lead. And then Sillinger scores again in the third period. Jason Blake and Richard Park get the assist. Islanders go on to win the game 5-3. But for Mike Sillinger, 2 goals. He is a +1. And he had 5 shots on goal, played almost 23 minutes. Mike Sillinger, a solid middle 6 forward center who played 2+ seasons for the Islanders. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no offseason. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all off season. Free agency, more of the draft, lots to get to this offseason, and it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we are back on Monday. We'll cover any other moves the Islanders make, plus the picks they make on Saturday at the draft. So looking forward to breaking all of that down, and we'll have more on some of the other picks as well. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.